Qorikancha is the main temple of the Incas and one of the most famous megalithic complexes in Peru. Huge blocks of hard andesite, polygonal masonry, almost perfect fitting of stones, highest seismic resistance, traces of highly sophisticated surface treatment, and even preserved areas of ancient polishing. All of this is located in the very center of Cusco, where just a few decades after the Spanish conquest, the Santo Domingo Monastery was built directly on top of the ancient walls. But the more closely you study this complex, the more questions arise. Let's try to figure out what Qorikancha is, how it is described by historical sources, and what the site itself can tell us about its history. We are in Peru, in the historic center of the city of Cusco. This is where one of the most famous monuments of ancient South American architecture, Qorikancha, is located. According to the official version, this is the Inca's main sun temple, built in the 15th century during the reign of Pachacutec. After the Spanish conquest, the complex was partially destroyed, the golden decorations disappeared, and right on the ancient foundation, the Spanish built the Santo Domingo Monastery. That's why today Qorikancha looks, to put it mildly, unusual. The upper part of the complex is colonial architecture from the 16th century, while the lower part is ancient stonework that has survived to this day. And it is precisely this that made Qorikancha world famous. Huge blocks of hard volcanic andesite, perfect fitting, polygonal curvilinear masonry, and the highest seismic resistance. Even centuries later, this complex continues to amaze, impressing with the quality of stonework and the level of craftsmanship. This expedition, of course, came about very unexpectedly. You could say that we were not fully prepared for it. At the very least, we definitely weren't ready for what we ended up seeing there. At the same time, the visit to Qorikancha took place at the very beginning of the entire expedition. Even before we gained that huge amount of experience, that mass of data and information about ancient civilizations and ancient technologies, it was already clear without a doubt that this was something truly extraordinary, that such masonry was unique. It was absolutely clear that, for the most part, it couldn't even be reassembled. In other words, if these stones ever fell apart, it would be incredibly difficult to put them back together. This is shown by a section of the wall that definitely collapsed during the last powerful earthquake, which destroyed half the city, and after that they tried to rebuild it. But it didn't work out, or it did, but not quite the same. Now let's see how the official version of history envisions the original appearance of Qorikancha. If we look at modern reconstructions, we'll see a rather unexpected picture. According to most historians, on these perfectly crafted megalithic walls, there once stood ordinary wooden structures covered with tall thatched roofs. This is exactly how Qorikancha is reconstructed today. Based on Spanish chronicles and archaeological data, it turns out to be quite an unusual combination. At the bottom, there is stone masonry that is still being studied by engineers and architects, and on top, a wooden frame with straw. And this applies not only to Qorikancha. According to academic reconstruction, most Inca temples and palaces had exactly these kinds of roofs. Such a combination looks extremely unusual and inevitably raises questions. If the builders were capable of creating such durable stone structures, why should the upper part of the complex, according to reconstructions, have been made from much less durable materials? This is one of those questions for which there is still no generally accepted answer. So, my friends, the precious pearl of Peru. The city of Cusco is right before you. And I am in Qorikancha. And now we will walk here and see what it looks like, this grand structure remodeled by the conquistadors. What did they change here? How did they improve maybe or worsen this place? And what was it like before them? And maybe even what they tried to hide here, because I still can't shake off this idea. And I'll show you exactly why right now. So I decided to start right away with this magnificent Incan stonework, which sometimes has huge blocks, meters in length, a completely zero gap, as we like to call it. There's no gap at all. And the entire surface is fitted together with the same level of precision throughout the whole depth, which can reach up to a meter, but it's never less than half a meter. There are some discrepancies in certain places, but overall, this is an example of technology that is beyond our reach today. No one has been able to replicate it yet. Scientists are afraid to conduct their experiments. Here's a stone, for example, 1.5 meters by 1 meter lying here. And this isn't a tile, it's not a facing. It actually goes all the way through. I'll demonstrate this on other sides for sure. So walking along this masonry, we can notice that all the surfaces here are uneven. They kind of seem chipped. If it's not so obvious in these places, then further inside I'll show you where it really stands out. But still, in some places you can see masterpieces like these shining through, which we simply cannot ignore. The surface is polished, or at least, well, it was subjected to some kind of treatment that left behind this mirror-like, almost glassy smooth surface. You can probably see that it's not very even, right? There are only a handful of stones like this left here. But maybe in the past everything here used to shine like this. And if everything here used to shine like this, then I think it's pretty obvious to assume that those who finished building this place in this way must have felt a bit embarrassed. The difference in stone processing technology was just too noticeable. And maybe someone tried and did a pretty good job. With some real cobblestone or an iron tool available in the 16th century to dull the shiny surfaces a bit, which still, even now, we can see here is one surface and here it's chipped to a depth of just a few millimeters. And here is another surface. And here, these are already the marks of a specific chisel tip that went all across here. And I have no doubt whatsoever that this is the work of later, much later hands. In all other respects, of course, they did a lot of work here cleaning up the original surfaces. Wow, look at this. So fresh, right? I hope you can see that. The marks from the chisel are a whole different story. Yes, even now, after 45 days of the expedition, I still stick to the hypothesis that these are chisel marks. Everywhere we find them, in Peru, well, on ancient stones, of course, they seem to have a rather decorative origin. That is, someone, at some point, some person whom we could call a vandal, yes, most likely he was acting on someone's instructions. He, or rather they, there must have been more than one, there had to be more than one. A very large crew that simply went around and decorated ancient stones with chisel marks. That's how simple and crazy it all sounds. Nevertheless, there are a number of sites we've identified where these signs are undeniable, and we actually... Soon I'll show you what description of this structure has come down to us, how the conquistadors found it here. Ah, yes, this is a very mysterious structure. Also, some of the interior surfaces unfortunately can't be seen, probably because of this small camera. But the thing on the left, yes, that one, that's a modern addition. Well, or at least those are surfaces worked with a chisel. On the right, it's not so obvious, but it's possible too. Maybe they used a cobblestone to work on it. That wouldn't leave such striking marks. What was this used for? Why was it necessary to make these grooves in the granite? But I still think that this, well, maybe it's not granite, but some very hard types of stone which later builders only used as blocks taken from older structures. Here it is from the other side. Magnificent. Well, yes, this is the original masonry, but it's been worked over with a chisel on top. It's very noticeable. We're trying to see. There. And this chisel work isn't everywhere. And in the niches, you can also see something that hasn't been completely chiseled out. Right. Dark. Well, we'll try not to interfere with the tour. Let's take a quick look around. Let's just go to any random spot, approach any random seam, and realize that it's not there. At the same time, this is not a flat surface. Very often it's a curved surface, like here, for example, you see. All of this goes far beyond human capabilities. The 21st century. And wherever we travel along these seams, we see the same thing everywhere. It's very hard to explain to someone who doesn't understand the joining of complex surfaces what the real substantial difficulty is in making curved seams. By curved, I mean the fundamental absence of any clear planes or geometric shapes, flat ones that could be prepared as inserts off-site or, for example, made in advance, or at some site, at some remote location, which would make the constant real-life joining of curved surfaces unnecessary. Honestly, this topic is so complex that it's even hard to put it into clear, understandable language correctly enough. It's an amazing phenomenon. For our science, it's absolutely essential to conduct at least one thorough study of these junctions. Specifically, we need to slightly disassemble the masonry, the insert in some place, open up all the gaps around at least a single block, and lay some sensors or something like dental film, which is used to check the tightness of a bite. Then the blocks need to be joined together, and we need to see, in percentage terms, how close to perfect the fit is. And I'm almost certain that we'll get such amazing results there that they will immediately focus scientific research on this area. Because there is a technology hidden there that is new to humanity, which without a doubt should be of utmost interest to it. A zero gap that goes through the entire depth of the masonry along curved lines. Engineers now perfectly understand my frustration as a historian. I am interested in the methods of stone processing that were used here, undoubtedly in some ancient times. Which period? Well, again, we can only speculate. We have to rely on the opinion of mainstream scholars. Here as well, you see, this isn't a flat surface. There's a small notch here. We saw the same thing in India and Hampi, only in a rougher form. Nevertheless, these masonry styles can be called related. And accordingly, the technologies that were used to create them can also be called related. Yeah. So let's look for and examine traces of ancient stoneworking. Everything is cleaned up very well. If, of course, this was cleaned up, this is still my hypothesis, which is based on the fact that we've already found more than 50 partially chipped polished stones in the center of Cusco, without even leaving its boundaries. The shiny surfaces are a separate and very interesting story. For me, it was a discovery. I had no idea they even existed. For me, until that moment, Peruvian stone surfaces were something rough, natural in shape, not bearing any traces. And I even doubted, just imagine, whether I should take a roughness meter with me on the expedition, because I had absolutely no idea where I could use it. Imagine my surprise when, just on the first night, I found more than 50 fragments of these surfaces in the center of Cusco on those ancient masonry structures. And practically all these surfaces, which of course have nothing to do with polishing, it's just a word because in our human range of technologies, it's the closest term we have. Nevertheless, the surface simply has the characteristics of glazing or vitrification, as it is commonly called. But vitrification is considered to be a natural process. At the same time, I have not seen anything natural about the vitrification of the blocks of ancient buildings in Peru. And we can only assume that earlier all or most, or at least the majority of these surfaces had a glassy mirror-like finish. And I have little doubt that for the conquistadors who came, it looked like a monstrous humiliation. They had to start building their structures literally from construction debris using mortar, which of course looked completely inappropriate compared to the ancient Incan walls. Here they have some kind of rule that you can't film paintings on video. And we're not interested in the paintings at all. Here they are, the technology of the conquerors, the victors. We see the same marks on the blocks. And this is limestone or tuff, some kind of soft light-colored stone. It has nothing to do with granite. But nevertheless, they needed tolerances of 10 millimeters for their curved blocks, so that all of this wouldn't collapse during construction. Well, and this too, yes, looks quite interesting from 5, 10 or even more meters away. But when you get closer, you immediately realize that nothing's really been done here, so to speak, right? Apparently, the Christian God didn't deserve any finishing work. It's of high quality, but since we're told that he was greatly adored, we have to assume that this is the best the European builders could achieve. Alright, so let's quickly move on to another stone structure. We're not filming the paintings, they're of absolutely no interest to us. But it seems we've been allowed to film the stones. Yes, this is where the museum stores some stones. I want to point out right away that even though there are some holes in the ancient stones, inside these holes there are no traces of impact. Not the slightest trace of impact. But there should be, because supposedly only by impact could all of this have been created. What is a trace of impact? This is what a trace of impact looks like. This is what it is. We don't need to go far to see it. It's present everywhere here. Oh, and now we can come closer and see what the conquistadors have to say about this thing. So, these stone structures were supposedly covered with a wooden roof and straw. And before all of this looked like this, we'll show you this corner of the wall soon. And all of this is incredibly huge, cyclopean, with jeweler-like precision, the whole district in the city. Without a single exception. They didn't mess up anywhere. It survived several earthquakes. Here we see the same technologies that were used in other parts of the world. Here too, there is possibly some interesting kind of joint. And here, nothing polished seems to catch our eye. But it's possible that even these stones were all chipped. Chipped. By some characters. Yes. Here, for example, is a clear restoration. Yes, and we can immediately see what the surface of a restored modern stone looks like. And this allows us to suspect that yes, indeed, the surfaces all over the city were brilliantly chipped. For a long time, carefully and diligently. with the help of primitive technologies and near slave labor. There's nothing surprising about that, but everything about these joints and seams is absolutely astonishing. Niches with unclear purposes. But still, you see, right, whether they're niches or not, whether they're stones or not. We weren't interested in straight lines, although that would have been much easier and simpler to lay. And here, it's clear that each one was individually fitted. Block, block. Each block. What? That makes it unlikely, because you can't even turn these blocks around in your hand. Even a crew. It's unlikely they'd be able to lift that kind of weight. That's several hundred kilograms at the very least. So, to lift it like that, to set it in place, here again, the surface has clearly been chipped. Super recent. We see them throughout the city. That's right. And probably you already understand my admiration and at the same time my indignation. Again, we see a check mark at the joint. In December. Team, what do you think is going on with the chicken? I don't know what they mean. For me, all of this is much more interesting. Why, how did this form for us ordinary mortals? This one also looks like it's not completely chipped off or broken off in a different way on the surface. By the way, there are quite a lot of them here. Here, all of this is recent work with iron, made with a sharp tip. Iron among the Incas. But they didn't have it. There was no iron, no steel, no hard alloys, no tools at all, and not even materials that would allow them to work with what, in fact, was the only thing they worked with. How many megatons of stone they processed? How many square meters, square kilometers of such perfect surfaces were joined together? It's hard to even imagine. It would be very interesting to add it all up and find out. But the fact remains that the only thing the Incas could use, according to official history, was a stone, a harder stone. And even if there is no harder material in nature, this mythical stone will still be invented by historians, because if not it, then nothing remains. But why does this problem even exist? It exists because history has been stuck in a dead end for quite a long time. And that's why there needs to be room for some new technologies. Maybe they might sound scary, maybe a bit too fantastical. But nevertheless, it seems to me that even a Jedi lightsaber already sounds more realistic here than a stone. And gradually, scientists, that is, people who are supposed to have some intelligence to understand something about cause and effect and evidence, it seems to me that they are starting to suspect something. And right away, just look at what a striking contrast there is. Even considering that this is a completely different and much softer type of stone, well, I'm not even going to mention the artistic value, of course. Let's not outrage the public. Here's an interesting trace, for example. This could have all been chipped out with a chisel. Let's go inside. Oh no, we can't. Let's stay here. Let's rest over there. Yeah, here's that outrageous stonework again. And this amazing stonework with outrageously chipped surfaces. Basically, you could spend forever crawling along these seams, looking for any kind of defects, inaccuracies, or mistakes at all. Yeah. But if any are found, they are the result of destruction, earthquakes, and not the tolerances of the original builder's technology. All right, let's move a little further this way. And of course, there's this interesting idea that all this magnificent granite, or at least very hard stonework, was covered with wooden poles and straw. And apparently it had some kind of utilitarian purpose. But of course, it's also kind of hard to believe. About the utilitarian purpose of the ancient Inca masonry. In general, why does it all look kind of like corn or something? Why did they make their lives so much more complicated? It seems like they took it to the extreme. It's like the most complicated thing they could possibly come up with was exactly what they used, without any hesitation or limitations. We don't see any actual complexity anywhere, not a single sign. Maybe some adjustments, maybe some defects, nothing. It feels like, well, literally just like this. Sim Sicilia Bimpu. And little Qorikancha is done, and kilometers of blocks are already laid. A mysterious magical technology. Here we are already encountering interesting traces of another type. I suspect the ancient builders had several tools, one of which allowed them to treat stone like this. And again, we don't know. Maybe at some point all of this was shining despite this very loose form, as if made in a single stroke. And then they also lightly chipped off a millimeter from the top. So what? Yeah, there are some marks here. Maybe someone was putting some shelves in here or something. Or maybe not. It's not clear. Everything needs to be researched, everything needs to be studied, but official science isn't interested in that. As far as official science is concerned, everything here is clear. And that's a terribly sad fact. Now, for example, destruction. Again, we see that, yes, this is a chisel. Here they are to do our precious strike marks. And they broke it out. Here is the inner seam. Look at it. I mean, I'm not lying to you, right? When I say it goes all the way through. I mean, considering that, I don't know, they blew up this surface, then they chipped away at it some more. But they used tremendous force. Here is the seam. You can't see it. But it's there. Here's the seam. Here's the seam. It's absolutely 99.9. Okay, let's not say 100, the sacred 100, but 99.9 of all these thousands of square meters. Connected, I don't know how many square meters of this surface there are here, of an absolutely phenomenal level. It was joined together, but everywhere we see this amazing, fantastic precision. We counted the number of square meters. Of course, it's a very rough estimate. It should be calculated more professionally. But according to the most conservative estimates, as of today, there are physically more than 3,000 square meters of adjoining block surfaces present in Qorikancha. Every 10 square centimeters deserve a dissertation, in my opinion. But there are more than 3,000 square meters there now. And if we believe the chronicles of the conquistadors, then at the time of their arrival, there was at least 5 or 6 times more masonry. So we're talking about more than 15,000 square meters perfectly joined on 5 sides out of 6, made from large blocks of andesite, diorite, granodiorite, and all kinds of stone. Along a curvilinear, extremely complex trajectory without any flat, smooth, polished surfaces. In general, this is the most monstrously complex thing in the world. It's impossible to even imagine anything more complicated than this. Nevertheless, 15,000 square meters, just so you understand, is like a path 1 meter wide and 15 kilometers long. In general, all of this is some kind of fantasy, in my opinion. Here too, they were ripping something out completely. It's unclear, there aren't really any visible traces of impacts here. Maybe they blew it up somehow. It's not clear. Ah, I see. Well, we've already been here. All right. Oh, what's this? Oh, subtitles by Dima Torzok. Well, what can I say to you in parting? 17th century? Yes, this was already after the conquest. 200 years later, someone just painted over everything and drew something with their finger. I don't know how to take this seriously. This is what should be taken seriously. This is what should be taken very seriously. The future of humanity depends on understanding the technology used to work this stone. These stones are all over the world. All over. The world. The older it is, the more complex it is. The older it is, the more precise it is. You know, the most shameful thing ever used for construction is apparently the brick. Ours. Yeah, from here. You can't see it. Imagine that. That polarizing effect isn't so obvious. Let's probably wrap up this video here. Because this is just unreal, of course. We'll also go over this with a roughness tester, but I'm telling you, this surface is close in quality to glass, to the Barabar caves, to the polished finish of Egyptian statues. You can even see reflections here in the light. Yes, maybe it's not that deep, but it's very consistent. All right? And well, we see it, right? And then boom, marks from the chisel, marks from the chisel, marks from the chisel. But here, you know, this is what I want to finish on. Thank you very much to that vandal who didn't chip it all off completely. Thank you. Over these hundreds of years, some pieces have actually survived to this day. And the last thing I wanted to say is that it is from this ancient, amazing building that the underground tunnel discovered 2 years ago and only recently opened begins. Through, I suspect, a mass of granite that leads a kilometer underground deep into the earth to the Saxonia fortress. Sajuaman, which we will visit tomorrow, and there is hope that we will get a permit to study this tunnel.